Namaskar, Nilesh here with another session of Shraddha and Pradnya. Today I have something exciting and something lighter. Of course, the things can get heavy very fast. All right, let's see how it goes. By the way, today is 3rd of November 2022. This one, in terms of the relevance of this day, as it relates to ancient Indian itihasa, this is the day, of course, long time ago, 7,583 years ago, this was the day when, this is a day after the Mahabharata war. Finally, the Mahabharata war is over, but not really, if you think of it. Ashwatthama is like last night, the night of the 2nd November. Ashwatthama killed 5 sons of Draupadi and many other warriors on the Pandava side. And then he ran away. He was expecting what is going to happen. And Bhim starts chasing him, and then Krishna and Arjun, and of course, many others follow. Bhim was searching for Ashwatthama to punish him for his heinous acts. And so this is, I don't want to talk about that today. We'll do that another episode sometime. But you can think of, you can remember this day, the 3rd November, with 3 B's, you know. So B as in boy, or I would say B as in Brahmacharya, or B as in Brahmastra. Okay, so today is the day, if one wants to remember, 3rd November, wants to remember in 3 ways, 3 B's, is Brahmacharya, Brahmastra, and Brahmastra. Okay, Ashwatthama released a Brahmastra at Arjun, or towards the Pandavas. And in response, Arjun also replied with another Brahmastra. And then, of course, likes of Narad Muni and Vyasadeva had to intervene, and that's a long story. I have covered it on Sattology before. I might have covered it on my channel. I will do it if the context is right for that information. But just in terms of remembering things, 3rd November, you can think of in terms of 3 B's, Brahmacharya, Brahmastra, and Brahmastra. And what's the deal with Brahmacharya? Well, that's what I have covered on one of my episode on Sattology with Aditya Satsangiji. So I would encourage you to look up for that episode. All right. Okay. But today, what I want to discuss is something that began with a message in Facebook from a medical professional, a medical doctor of Indian origin, based in Australia. And so when I woke up here in USA early morning, like 5:30, I saw the message and I thought that was interesting, and I thought I'll do a quick episode in this series of Shraddha and Pradnya. All right, my neighbor walking there, okay, just saying hi to me. So, all right, so this is part Shraddha and Pradnya, part 25. Pujya Buddhi, Pramanya Buddhi, and Viveka Buddhi. And you will see again how all these 3 get employed, get utilized in this particular session. So what my friend, a medical professional from Australia, sent me this morning is this Facebook post by Jatayu Bengaluru ji. I have had a pleasure of meeting Jatayuji in person. I'm trying to think. I think it was at IIT Chennai for the Swadeshi Indology conference, 2nd conference. I think we worked together on a few things there related to the conference. I don't remember the details now. And of course, he's connected with me on the Facebook. He has helped me in the past when I have some specific queries. And of course, for his own reasons, he disagrees with a number of I shouldn't say number, but the last thing probably I remember, I don't remember whether it's a Ramayana dating or a Mahabharata dating. And he has said whatever he wants to say. I don't think he will say it and then he will just walk away. He doesn't want to necessarily discuss things. Everyone has their own choice and a freedom. So that's totally understandable. He has definitely been helpful to me. Just I'm giving you that background so you know the context. This was sent by my friend from Australia. So this is not like a question. He just thought, he always keeps on sharing wonderful things with me. He just shared it. And I thought this was worth commenting. Okay. So this is from Jatayuji. And so my comments will be, of course, based on a Shraddha Buddhi, Pramanya Buddhi, and a Viveka Buddhi. There are things that I am going to agree with him. There are things that I am going to disagree with him. When I agree or disagree, in each case, I will state why I agree and why I disagree. And that is the use of the Pramanya Buddhi. Okay, the Tarka, the Anumana, the Pratyaksha, Upamana, but also Viveka. The Tarka has to be logical, and that's what Nyaya Darshana teaches us. I will also point out, besides disagreements, even the minor issues related to, you can say, not so much a fallacy, or I don't know if I can call it a fallacy. It may fall into a fallacy. It may fall into even a nigraha sthana, which is to say, I would say in Jataiji, if you listen to this, a mild opportunity, a mild occasion for a rebuke. This is not to say some big blunder or anything, even from a logical or tarka point of view, but I'll come to that. So what he writes there, and this one, assuming my friend from Australia was sending this like a fresh, so then it says 1 hour ago, but already a few hours have gone by. So I would say maybe last 24 hours sometime in any case. So Uttara is a clear later addition to the original Valmiki Ramayana corpus. Okay. And of course, then he says, this is a well-established scholarly view based on strong internal evidence from the text itself. Let's do the Purva Paksha to give him a benefit of doubt and frankly, to agree with him. Yes, if you look at the end of Yuddha Kanda, you will see the Falashruti. Okay, and that is been taken as the internal evidence to say that, hey, the Falashruti comes at the end of the text and therefore this thing is over. And then, of course, the Uttara Kanda comes. Yes, that is a reasonable evidence, but I want to give you a contrary position, or at least at least exceptions to this particular rule. Now, Jatayuji has not said that is the internal evidence, the Phalashruti at the end of Yuddha Kanda. But what you will find is, for example, if you go to Mahabharata, you will find Phalashruti coming at the end of many other parva or sub-parva, okay, within that, just like at the end of Bhagavad Gita and so on. I mean, it can come at the end of Karna Parva and so on and so forth. So Falashruti may come, and usually that's a kind of a closure of a kind, but that's by itself is not a guarantee that therefore the text is closed, okay? There could be a very special instance why the Falashruti might be added. However, the fact that there is a Falashruti at the end of Yuddha Parva is a very good evidence to say that that was kind of, Valmiki ji was definitely putting a kind of closure on it. All right. Now, clear letter addition. Again, I would agree with that. The name itself, Uttarakanda, gives that away. It is so. If all other kanda have a specific names, but Uttarakanda as given as in the sense of appendix, a post note or things like that. Just like in case of Mahabharata, we have Harimamsha as a killer parva. Okay, it's an appendix to Mahabharata. So that's that. Okay, that's what I have to say. So I see his point of view, agree with that. Of course, when he says well-established scholarly view, yeah, let's accept that. I mean, I don't know who these scholars are, because as you read his writing, you will find there are many others who disagree with it. Okay, so yes, there is a point of view, possibly good number of scholars agree with it, and that's good. The point is just the number of scholars, or the fact that few scholars or a significant number. Even so, what if 99% scholars agree with it? If it's not based on evidence, it's not based on a pramana, we cannot accept it. But that's not the situation here. There is some decent evidence based on which, at least as a what can you say, just giving a benefit of doubt, it's perfectly okay to say yes, this the Valmiki Ramayana, at least at some point Valmiki ji said, okay, with Yuddha Kanda I'm stopping there. Now, whether Valmiki ji decided to write the appendix in the form of Uttara, or disciples of Valmiki added this Uttara, that remains a very open question. Okay, and I have not seen evidence in support of it or against it. But let's continue, because he is making a very interesting and specific points as to when Uttara was composed. Okay, so that's very interesting, and that's why I thought it was worth doing a short episode in this Shraddha and Prajna series. Then so he gives additional justification. Yeah, let's go through that. A couple more points, I did not highlight those. Then he says, which I like, by the way, he says this view that the Uttara is a later addition, he's saying that his view is, or the view of these scholars, certain group of scholars, is irrespective of the controversial and not so noble episodes in it. In it meaning in Uttarakhand, like Sri Rama banishing the pregnant Sita to forest, killing of Shambhuka, etc. Okay, I'm glad he mentioned that, because when I get this question, like most frequently asked question about this Uttarakhand. And usually what I see is that people ask these questions, but they have not bothered to read Valmiki Ramayana, the first 6 kanda, and also Uttarakhand. They just want to ask a question as if, like, they want some entertainment. Most of the people do like this. So I'm so glad that Jatayuji has said this, that, he's saying this irrespective of the controversial episode. So Rama banishing the pregnant Sita to forest, killing of Shambhuka, which is to say, he's saying that's not the reason why he's saying this is a later addition. It is to be noted that Rama Bhaktas from all regions of India, from Tulsidas to Tyagaraja, have not mentioned Uttarakanda episodes in any of their stotras or hymns to Sri Rama, okay, as this whole kanda does not add any glory to him. Well, I have studied Tulsidasji's Tulsidasji's Ramacharita, but with my limited understanding of Avadhi, even with translation, Tyagaraja's Stotra I have not studied. And the fact that somebody did not mention it, somebody did not mention something by itself is not a proof of anything. Although, if such a thesis was independently established, then the fact Tulsidas or Tyagaraja did not mention the Uttarakhand episodes, I don't know if that's true or not, in their stotras and so on, does become a corroborative evidence. Again, I'm just taking this opportunity for the benefit of others. Is like how you can take a certain writing and how you analyze it. Okay, because many people just simply look at something and say, oh, I was so impressed, or I did not like it. It's always a very binary reaction. Most of the time you see a binary reaction. I did not like it, I hate it, or I love it, oh, Jai Sri Ram, or something like this. Well, we don't have to do like this. So my point is that fact Tulsidaji or Tyagaraja did not mention Uttarakhand episodes in their stotras. We don't know if we have access to all the stotras and so on, so many open issues. That by itself is not a proof of anything. However, if the thesis of Uttarakanda as a later addition is established from some independent evidence, then the evidence that Jatayuji mentions related to Tulsidas and Tyagaraja definitely becomes a corroborative and thus supportive evidence. Then he mentions, as this whole kanda does not add any glory to him. Let me take a clear position so that I don't confuse people. Like my wife always tells me, in Marathi, he says, I talk gol gol. I don't talk like a clear, crisp, left and right, black and white. So I'm trying to improve how I state things. So let me, in that spirit, say, as this whole kanda does not add any glory to him, I disagree. Actually, there is significant information that is available in Uttara that is not available in any of the previous 6 kanda that adds to our comprehension, understanding of the entire Ramayana. This I am saying not as opinion. This is based on my study of 30 plus years. And if you want to see where that comes, now, mostly so far I have written only about the dating portions, the historic Rama. You can start reading historic Rama for the dating aspect. But outside this book, and I have not published it as a book yet, but you can look at, I have spoken about it in many conferences, many workshops, and I also published small short articles, for example, article on the Kumbhakarna and so on. And you will see that the Uttarakanda adds in many ways amazing information that is simply not there in the first 6 kanda. So I disagree that this kanda does not add any glory to him, like glory to Rama. Now, if you are just taking Rama as a Bhagwan and that, and anything else, if it's not about Rama, doesn't matter. That's a very narrow pointed viewpoint. I'm not saying Jatayuji is saying it, but if somebody has that point of view, then yeah, one may feel in his subjective judgment that it does not add any glory. As far as I am concerned, if something like such as Uttarakanda provides a unique information which was otherwise not available, I consider that as adding to the glory of Rama and Ramayana, or glory to Ramayana events, and therefore to Bhagwan Ram. Let's go further. They never felt true belongingness to this kanda. I mean, he's referring to Tulsidas and Tyagaraja and other Rama Bhaktas. I don't know what exactly Tulsidas Tyagarajaji felt. They might have felt this way, no belongingness, like the way Jatayuji is saying. I don't know how to figure that out. I personally feel very fortunate that whoever composed Uttarakanda, I'm so glad that they did it and the information is preserved. Next, it is upheld only by certain. Oh, yeah, okay, let's go to that. Now, this one I found interesting. It is upheld only by certain rigid Sanskrit Pandits, and other orthodox strictly go by the book people, bent upon accepting all established traditional opinion unconditionally. Again, I would disagree with this. I would disagree, and in support of it, I'll give myself as one example. Okay, I definitely do not fall. Now somebody will say, well, Nilesh, but you are talking about yourself. Well, if you disagree with what I'm going to say, come forward and show me any evidence that supports this. I disagree that I would fall into a category such as, say, a rigid Sanskrit Pandit. No, you can find them on the Twitter and Sanskrit Google groups, and you can find them on Facebook. I am in some of these groups, but no one would call me rigid Sanskrit Pandit. Okay. First thing, people will refuse to call me Pandit, then refuse to call me Sanskrit Pandit, and then definitely, therefore, the rigid Sanskrit Pandit doesn't apply to me. Okay. Then, and of course, the rigid, absolutely not. But I would love to hear to the contrary, provided it is backed by evidence. Okay. Otherwise, Hitchens razor apply. Now, other orthodox strictly go by the book people, bent upon accepting all established traditional opinion unconditionally. Okay. Now, of course, Jatayuji must be saying based on his limited experience of who has come across in these two categories. I would say, late Dr. Brahmarshi Padmakar Vishnu Vartak, amazing researcher. amazing researcher, and he will not fall into any of these two categories. If you look at Vedamurti Satavalekarji, okay, Sripad Damodar Satavalekarji, you may not agree with some of his positions, but that's true for my positions, and that's true for Dr. Vartakji's position. That's true for anyone. I mean, Jatayuji and I don't agree with each other. Okay, that doesn't make him immediately him as a rigid or me as a rigid. He will think I'm a rigid, and I'll think he's rigid. That's a different story. But my point is, Damodar Satavalekarji, there are many others. Professor K.S. Narayanacharya, and I was very fortunate to have in a way short, but in a way long, detailed conversation with him on many aspects of Ramayana. And I mean, I would be interested to know if Jatayuji or many others consider him as a rigid Sanskrit Pandit or strictly go by the book. From my limited experience with Professor K.S. Narayanacharya, I can tell you what a fascinating individual he is. And we were just going words by words and like totally just enjoying this as a Tushan teacher, Raman teacher, Satatam Kirtayanto Mam, the way Bhagavad Gita explains. So I don't agree with that. These people may be insisting that Uttarakhand is a part of Valmiki Ramayana. I don't know about that. And yeah, really, I don't know about that. But what I will say is that I do not fall into either of this category, and neither does Dr. Pavi Vartak, and nor likes of late case Narayanacharya, and I know many others. And still, all of these individuals do hold Uttarakanda as a useful part of Valmiki Ramayana, and not something to be just discarded or so, something like that. Now, again, to be fair, I'm not saying necessarily Jatayuji is saying that these should be discarded. Okay. Further, they do not feel any connect with the heart of Valmiki. Okay. Well, I would, I mean, if it's with this is about rigid Sanskrit Pandits and Orthodox strictly go by the book. Hey, this could be true, Jatayuji, I don't know. But if it is about anyone accepting Uttarakanda as a legitimate text related to Valmiki Ramayana, then I disagree with you. Because when he says they do not feel any connect with the heart of Valmiki, I very much feel in connect with the heart of Valmiki. Of course, others can disagree, but hey, they have to tell me how they know what I feel. Okay. Anyways, let's move on. Uttarakanda is totally unrelated to Valmiki, the Adi Kavi Rishi. I don't know what that means, so I'll just skip that statement. Okay. Totally unrelated to Valmiki. I don't know what that means. Okay. Next, chronologically, it got added at the end of Valmiki Ramayana at a time when the third revision of Mahabharata happened, the Sutta Ugrashrava layer after the Vyasa and Vaishampayan layer. This is very interesting. Okay, so I don't know if Jatayuji is quoting a position of somebody else and also he's agreeing with it, or that should be considered as his original claim. I don't know the history of this. Either way, this is a very interesting claim. And interesting meaning, I'm not saying in a sarcastic way. It could be very interesting and a useful claim. Okay. Assuming evidence can be found or evidence can be grouped together in support of this claim. The claim says that chronologically, the Uttara Ramayana was added to Valmiki Ramayana at the time when the third revision of Mahabharata happened, the Sutta Ugrashrava layer after the Vyasa and Vaishampayana layers. Those of you who may not be aware of this, actually you can look at the current manuscript or manuscripts, plural, of Mahabharata, the way they come to us, are essentially, there are 4 recensions, 3 or 4 recensions. He's saying 3, which is reasonable. The first one is Vyasadeva composed it. Okay, so that's kind of like number 1. Then he taught to his Shishya, which is still number 1. But when the Shishya started saying it, that's like a recension number 2. Now, that Vaishampayan, one of the Shishya of Vyasadeva, recited it to Janmejaya at the Sarpa Satra. So, you may know something, but what you recite can vary from it. And so it may consider that as a second or third recension. Okay. Now, when Vaishampayan was reciting to Janmejaya, Roma Harshana Sauti, there were many in the audience. One of them was Roma Harshana Sauti or Loma Harshana Sauti. Ugrashrava, another name, all of his name. And he was there in the audience. And after that Sarpasatra was over, or the Mahabharata Akhyan was over, Romarshana Sauti visited Naimisharanya, where where some yajna was going on, 12-year yajna was going on with the Shaunaka Rishi and many others. And when they asked him whereabouts of Roma Harshana Sauti, Ugrashrava, and where did he come from and what did he hear, and then Ugrashrava again narrates what he heard at the Sarpasatra of Janmejaya from Vaishampayan to the sages of Naimisharanya, headed by Shaunak Rishi. So that's like a fourth recension or third recension. Now remember, this is catalogued again. This is composed again. Therefore, we see Shaunaka Uvacha and Roma Harshana Uvacha. Okay, and then of course the stuff gets repeated because they are essentially repeating it. So these are 3 or 4 recensions. That's what he's referring to. So he's referring to that last recension and claiming that Uttara was added at that time. Very interesting. I'm hearing this for the first time. I don't know what the evidence is, but definitely this is a very interesting claim. And also, if proved, can be even a useful claim. And useful in what way? I will briefly mention in what way it's useful, but some very fascinating inferences we can draw. So let me just complete this first. Okay. Now, what Jatayuji says is that the reference to Uttarakanda episodes in the Ramopakhyan of Mahabharata in the Vanaparva is due to this. Very interesting. So now what he's saying is I was saying it. Okay. So this is very interesting and useful, by the way. But let's understand the context of it. Jatayuji is agreeing that in the Ramopakhyan of the Mahabharata, okay, Ramopakhyan comes 2-3 times Ramayana summary comes in Mahabharata 2-3 times, but let's focus on the Ramopakhyan that comes in the Vanaparva of a Mahabharata, and that's what he's referring to. Jatayuji is saying that the references from Uttarakanda, or reference to Uttarakanda, and some of the references to the events mentioned in the Uttarakanda occur in Ramopakhyan of Vanaparva of Mahabharata because it was essentially composed, the Uttarakanda was composed almost at the same time, which is to say the last recension of Mahabharata coincident with Uttarakanda. Okay, and not because he's saying, and not because Uttarakanda already existed before this. Now, I am not exactly sure what problem this particular claim solves, because Uttarakanda could have been added at the time of Valmiki, could be added by Valmiki, could have been added by the disciples of Valmiki, or by some other author, more or less at the time of Ramayana. Just like we see this Ugrashrava Sauti. In fact, I can tell you the approximate and relatively precise timing of the 4th recension. It was based on my research. Okay, it's based on a Mahabharata text evidence about 5480 BCE. Okay, so this last recension, so Vaishampayan reciting it to Janmejaya, and then Ugrashrava Sauti going to Naimisharanya and reciting it again. That approximately time is that of 5480 BCE. You would have to read my 2 other books, okay, or watch my videos, blogs, and so on. When did the Mahabharata war happen? And let me see if I have, and then the Bhishma Nirvana. Okay, so this is what will tell you how I arrived at 5480 BCE for this 4th recension, based on 300 plus references just purely astronomy references, but practically multidisciplinary evidence based on geology, geophysics, geochemistry, climatology, oceanography, genealogy, paleontology, sedimentology. What am I missing? I think I covered all. Genetics, physical anthropology, very multidisciplinary evidence. Anyways, let's move on. So I'm not sure that by claiming that the Uttara was composed at the time of the last recension of the Mahabharata, it's a very interesting conjecture, okay, and can be useful, as I said, and I'll come to that. What exactly it achieves? Because Uttarakanda, I digress, but Uttarakanda could have been composed at the time of Valmiki, at the time of Ramayana itself, by Valmiki, if not by Valmiki, by the disciples of Valmiki, or by somebody else, maybe few years after that, few decades after that, just like the fourth recension of Mahabharata. Okay, first recension of Mahabharata happened when? About 18 years after the Mahabharata war, so 55, 61. Let's add 20 years to it, so that 61, 51, 41. So about 55, 40 BCE is when the first recension. So Vyasadeva wrote 5540 BCE is the time when Vyasadeva wrote Mahabharata. Okay, then he taught to his disciples, and then additional, say, 40, 60 years go by, like whole life of Parikshit, right? 60 years of his life. Then Janmeja is on the throne, and then he conducts a Sarpasatra. That's when this was done. So that's how actually you come to 5480 BCE. But my point is, so yes, somebody after like few decades within within the next 100 years, 200 years, this could have been done. Or it could have been done any time between the Ramayana to Mahabharata, that is from 14,000 years ago, like 12,000, 200 BCE to 5540 BCE, when Vyasadeva finally wrote Mahabharata. It can be any time. So I'm not sure. I'm not saying this is not a criticism of Jatayuji or whoever made this position, but I'm not sure what problem this particular claim, a particular conjecture solves. That's what I'm not sure. But Jatayuji said something interesting, and I want to definitely bring it out. Because there is a group out there who are very much against Uttarakanda. Somehow they feel very uneasy as soon as even they hear the word Uttarakanda. And therefore, they actually would fall into the two categories that mentioned by Jatayuji, like the rigid Sanskrit Pandits, or strictly go by the book. And therefore, they have a problem. Some of these orthodox strictly go by the book have a problem with Uttarakhand because the existence of Uttarakhand is not suitable for their inclinations, for their taste, for their liking. And therefore, since if the book exists, then they have to accept it. Therefore, they want to deny the existence of Uttarakhand or call Uttarakhand as a very later addition and a interpolated stuff. Okay. Now, Jatayuji is not necessarily saying that, but my point is therefore, even they deny. I know many who come to me through all kinds of mediums, so I don't keep track of them because I frankly find these discussions irritating sometimes, because they don't read anything. They don't read anything and they just ask questions. That is not a samshaya. Okay, that is not a samshaya. That is a waste of time. That is a tamas. That is a laziness. But something Jatayuji is saying, I like it for this reason, and I would agree with the partial portion there. The references to Uttarakanda episodes in the Ramopakhyan of a Vanaparva, he's saying, is because of this, because of the fact that the the Uttarakanda was composed at the time of the last recension. My point is, the references to Uttarakanda episodes in Ramopakhyan can come either because it was composed at the same time, or it can come because it was composed long before that, so that itself is not I don't see the logical connection there, because it was composed at the same time, and therefore you see that doesn't make sense. I mean, that can happen, but there is no causality. It could have happened 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 7,000 years ago, and still it can come in the Ramopakhyan. Something else that interesting that other question that just other point that came to my mind. It will be very interesting to study to study this. And those people who keep on asking me, Nileshji, do you have any project in mind that I can do? Here is one project for you. Okay. As I'm reading this and discussing it, I thought about this. And this particular study, if you do it, can be very useful to support the conjecture that Jatayuji is stating or making, if it is his own conjecture for the creation or composition of Uttarakanda coincident with the last recension of Mahabharata, is this. As a number of you would know, if not, here is the information for you, you can verify. Some of the way the descriptions are given in Ramopakhyan, okay, they do not agree, or they do not exactly match with what is given in Valmiki Ramayana. I'll just mention one instance. There are a few others. For example, in Valmiki Ramayana, you will see Rama killed Kumbhakarna. Whereas in Ramopakhyan, you read that it was Lakshmana who killed Kumbhakarna. Now, as far as the priority in terms of the gradation, Mahatva Mapan or Taratamya, we should always give weightage to Valmiki Ramayana. Okay, so we would go with, at least as a first approximation, yes, what is said in Valmiki Ramayana, that Rama killed Kumbhakarna. There is a long description of a fight and so on, whereas in Ramopakhyan, it's just 2 lines, like Lakshmana, a few lines, Lakshmana killed Kumbhakarna. It will be interesting to take example events like this, or event description like this, which differs from what the way it is stated in Ramopakhyan of Mahabharata versus Valmiki Ramayana, and see which of the two, if there is a direct or indirect reference in the Uttarakanda, to see. If we find, and I don't know what the answer is, okay, this is how, guys, the research takes place. If we find, now this is not a guarantee, by the way, even if we find it, but suppose if we find that the way that these things are described in Ramopakhyan tend to match closely with the Uttarakanda, the way it is described in Uttarakanda rather than the first 6 kanda of Valmiki Ramayana, then directionally that evidence would act as a corroborative evidence in support of the claim that Jatayuji is making, or Jatayuji is stating of somebody's claim, which, since I don't know that, but let's move on. Then next he says, then Uttarakanda episodes keep recurring in many Puranas like Padma Puran, Skanda Puran. Well, that's true. I agree with him. That's not only true for Uttarakanda, that is true for all Ramayana episodes, Valmiki Ramayana episodes. It is also true for Mahabharata. Okay, they get repeated in Puranas, Padma Puran, Skanda Puran, Bhagavad Puran, Vishnu Puran, even Harivansha, which is considered a killer parva. You see these events coming into these Puranas, and in a modified fashion. Okay, in a modified fashion. Many times the descriptions of these same events given in Puranas do not agree with Valmiki Ramayana, if it is related to Ramayana, or they do not agree with the Mahabharata text, if it is related to Mahabharata. Okay, so it is important to understand that the Puranas are extremely useful, but they are more like a gold mine rather than a goldsmith's shop. Goldsmith's shop, mostly you're going to find pure stuff. Puranas are like a gold mines. There is a gold there, but you have to dig through and separate out a lot of dirt before you get the gold nuggets. Okay, a lot of work required. A Viveka Buddhi is required, Pramanya Buddhi is required, the Shraddha Buddhi is required, of course, and also to understand Mahatva Mapan and Taratamya. The priority, if it is about Mahabharata, first it should go to the Mahabharata text. If it is about Ramayana, it should go to Ramayana text, and not any Ramayana text, but Valmiki Ramayana text. Let's move on. So I agree with him that then these all description comes into Puranas, and he has not said it, but in a modified form. And then, of course, likes of Kalidas and Bhavabhuti says that when they used it in the dramas and so on, they would have taken the writers or artist liberty, in adding some embellishments. That is very much that happens. The one that I've highlighted afterwards, I want to mention a point from Nyaya Darshana. Then he says, and some of which these additional embellishments, then they get inserted into the Valmiki text itself over time. And that's how the present popularly known version of Uttara Kanda emerged. Okay, now a minor rebuke that I want to bring here from Nyaya Darshana is this. Nyaya Darshana says, to explain something, if you explain a specific point. So for example, here, the specific point about Uttara Kanda as a later addition. If that's the Pratijna, in the Pararthanuman or Avayava element, Avayava Padartha of Nyaya Darshana. If your Pratijna is that Uttara Kanda is a later addition, and in support of that, if you are claiming that Uttara Kanda was composed at the time of the last recension of Mahabharata, fine, great, then definitely that makes it a later addition. And then now you have to go on, actually get busy giving the evidence for that claim, for that Pratijna, that Uttara Kanda was composed at the time of the last recension of Mahabharata. But after saying this, if you are also saying in the same breath, okay, so then the stuff that got embellished further into Puranas and by likes of Kalidas and Bhavabhuti, and eventually that got inserted into the Valmiki text itself, and that's how Uttara Kanda has emerged. This is actually two hetus. Okay, so the first one is that Uttara Kanda composed at the time of the last recension. And by the way, what you see in Uttara Kanda is because of the interpolations, those become two different hetus. Okay, are they required? Now, this is not to deny that the interpolations don't happen. Interpolations happens all the time. Okay, and therefore I said it's not a very severe rebuke, it's a mild rebuke. But the point is, you just need to prove that first point, clear letter addition. You only need to state only one hetu, at least one hetu at a time, until that argument is complete. Otherwise, Nyaya Darshana consider this as a point of Nigraha Sthana. Okay, this is a point, consider point as an illogical and points for defeat. So I just want to mention this. Not so much, this is in the writing of Jatayuji, not so much directed at him. I don't think he's necessarily interested in hearing from me about Nyaya Darshana based on my past experience, but it could be very useful and beneficial to others. Okay, so I'm just mentioning it. Now, so quickly, if I have to summarize the claims of Jatayuji, Uttara Kanda is clearly later addition to Valmiki Ramayana. I completely agree. Now, by later, is it after like 10 years? Is it after 20 years? Is it after a few decades? Is it after a few hundred years? Or as Jatayuji says, at the time of the last recension of Mahabharata, that remains to be determined. Okay, because I have not seen evidence for any of these different proposals, different claims, including mine. I said maybe a few decades after Valmiki wrote Valmiki Ramayana 6 Kanda. I have not seen evidence. I don't have evidence, therefore it's just a pure guess. Okay, but I agree that it is a later addition, definitely. But I don't see this later in the sense of like few thousand years after. However, if what Jatayuji is saying is actually comes out to be true, based on whatever future evidence we find, or maybe he has already presented evidence. He refers to in his post that he has written something in Tamil. I cannot read Tamil, but if it comes to light in a translation or somebody brings it out, I'll be very happy to look at it. It will actually provide many beautiful insights, and I'll come to that in my summary slide. But let's move to number 2. Uttarakand does not add to the glory of Rama. I mean, this, I would say, Jatayuji has every right to believe in this thing in his subjective conviction. I would say I disagree with it in my subjective conviction. But actually, even I can say in my objective research work, I can say that I have found Uttarakanda to be extremely useful, and it definitely adds many insights to the narration of Ramayana and therefore to narration of Bhagwan Ram. Number 3, it is upheld by, oh yeah, certain rigid, so Jatayuji says anyone who is kind of hanging on to Uttarakanda is due to them being rigid Sanskrit Pandits or orthodox folks who strictly want to go by the book. These folks definitely, I mean, these folks could fall into this category. Therefore, they want to hang on to Uttarakanda. I have no say one way or the other. I would say I do not fall into any of these, or likes of Brahmarshi Padmakar Vishnu Vartakji or Vedamurti Damodar Satavadekarji, or many others. Actually, I know many others. Professor K.S. Naranacharya, I had a personal discussions with him. Everyone has a different shade of opinion about not just Uttarakhand, about many things. Okay, but definitely the few people I mentioned, including myself, do not fall into either of this category. And still, based on my limited understanding of these individuals, my conversations with them, and personally for myself, I consider it extremely useful. And that usefulness of Uttarakhand has nothing to do with me being rigid Sanskrit Pandit, which I'm not. I'm not a Pandit and I'm not a Sanskrit Pandit. Definitely not a rigid Sanskrit Pandit or rigid at anything. And definitely not orthodox who strictly go by the book. In fact, I love the Brahma Bindu Upanishad verse, so Palalamiva Dhanyarthi Tejet Grantham Asheshata. Grantham Abhyasya Medhavi. Of course, if the Grantha exists, study them with a full attention, Jnana Vijnana Tattvataha or Jnana Vijnana Tattpara. But once you have done, Palalamiva Dhanyarthi Tejet Grantham Asheshata. Also, as a student of Bhagavad Gita, Chandansya Paranani Yastam Vedasa Vedavid, the knowledge is not stuck in some book. It is there, out there, and it can be always extended, or as it is given in Taittiriya Brahmana, how much you are going to study. I mean, at some point you have to transcend the books also, because as that story of, I think, sage Bharadwaj and Indra. So Bharadwaj is studying Vedas one lifetime, another lifetime, third lifetime. And then Indra says, hey, what if I give you the fourth lifetime? What would you do? And he says, oh, I will study Veda. And he says, yeah, really? He lifts like 3 stones from the ground and say, look, these are the 3 Vedas that you have studied. You see those 2 big mountains? They're all Veda, Ananta Veda. So definitely I would not consider myself strictly stuck in books in any fashion. Anyways, I thought that was an interesting thing that he wrote. And this could be very well true for what he's saying. I don't know that. I have no comment on it. It's just that just for the benefit of other people, and of course Jatayuji, that there are people who may not fall into either of these 2 categories, and they still upheld Uttarakand, such as myself, as an extremely useful text that adds to the glory of Ramayana and therefore to glory of Bhagwan Ram. Okay, knowing insights about Rama, his time, and so on and so forth. Number 4. Uttarakanda was added coincident with last recension of Mahabharata. That is a interesting claim. Actually, by the way, I should make it very clear, since as I said, my wife says I go round and round and don't say things clearly. I do not have anything against it. Okay, I don't know if I have anything for it, which is to say, I have no opinion on it. As I said, I am very curious to know exactly when Uttarakanda was composed, who composed it, and so on, so forth. So any new claim such as this, new to me, by the way, it may be known to others, is very exciting to me. It's truly exciting to me, and I look forward to see the evidence in support of it. Okay, I mean, Jatayuji has already stated something. I don't consider, based on my knowledge, that evidence as something that will pass the test of objectivity or the Nyaya Darshana or logic of scientific method. However, it is actually a corroborative evidence if shown to be that way. But we do need something substantial. And this is not like a matter that stops us from studying Uttarakanda or not studying Uttarakanda. But very interesting claim that excited me. In fact, that was one reason I thought of doing this session. So Jatayuji, thank you. Notwithstanding the ultimate outcome of this particular claim, the ultimate fate of this particular claim. Okay, so very, very interesting. And I will share insights, assuming this is true, assuming number 4 true, what insights and inferences we can draw in my summary. Let's go to next, number 5. Now, number 4 is the reason why Jataiji says why Uttarakanda episodes occur in Ramopakhyana of Mahabharata, Vana Parva. And I already talked a lot about it. I don't see how that's even relevant. Okay, if if somebody claims Uttarakanda was composed long time, like 1,000 years after Mahabharata, then this would be an issue, because then you would say, how come the Uttarakanda references, which was composed 1,000 long time after the Mahabharata, occurred in the Mahabharata text? And of course, people would have said interpolation. Yeah, fine. I mean, that's one explanation. The onus is on that person to provide the evidence. But so therefore, I don't see why number 4 is required to justify Uttarakanda episodes in Ramopakhyana, because Uttarakanda could have been composed anytime between the Ramayana and a Mahabharata, and still we can explain the Uttarakanda insertion. Okay, and of course, if somebody can prove with evidence it was created afterwards, after long time after Mahabharata, then that person has to bring the argument of a interpolation. Now, if they can prove it decisively, then we have no other option but to accept interpolation, how the Uttarakanda episodes occurred in Ramopakhyana. Again, I'm taking this time to show, to share with the guys who are enjoying these Shraddha and Prajna series episodes, to see how the thinking has to go, guys. Okay, try to remain consistent. And let me tell you, when I just think like this, I make blunders. Sometimes I may not be going through logically, and I will correct myself. So no problem if we make a mistake, as long as we are willing to accept the mistake when that happens, or when somebody points it out, and if it is true. All right, let's go to 6. These Uttarakanda episodes, Jataiji says, kept recurring in Puranas and via later creative individuals. I agree. And the only thing I would add is, this is not limited to Uttarakanda episode. This is limited to all the Kanda episodes of Valmiki Ramayana. And that is also true for everything in Mahabharata. That's why we get these all stories, such as the crazy thing of Jayadratha and solar eclipse. For heaven's sake, I mean, why people not read Mahabharata? Okay, but everyone, I mean, just like this Uttarakhand thing, people have to ask me. I mean, I get like 2-3 folks asking me that question. It's a very tiring, irritating, and these are the people who follow me, but they don't bother to watch my videos with Sathology or Sangam Talks or Jaipur Dialogues, wherever, where I have clearly shown why there cannot be a solar eclipse. There was no solar eclipse. Mahabharata does not talk about it. It's a very similar flavor like this Uttarakanda question, but I agree with the last point of Jatayuji. Quickly, I would encourage people to, if you are curious, of course, otherwise no, it's not for just somebody who only wants to read a quick novel or something, no. But if you want to know the importance of Uttarakanda, it's important for many things, like I said, many other insights. But from a dating perspective, the historic Ram, or if you are in India, I don't have the Indian copy with me here, the 12,209, it's exactly same book, same content, just a different title, and the cover looks different. You'll see Ravan and Ram and so on, from Subbu Publications. This is from Amazon. I would encourage you to read the evidence, not only from the Uttarakanda that is there in this book, but from all 6 Kanda. What I want to share with you is that the evidence of Uttarakanda, the evidence of seasons, evidence of lunar months, evidence of seasons, which is astronomy evidence, any other astronomy evidence, it fits perfectly, beautifully, elegantly, okay, like pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, not only with any specific evidence of the first six kanda, but with all the astronomy associated, astronomy related, total of 600 plus pieces of evidence. It fits beautifully. Now keep that in mind to draw the insights, additional insights, assuming the claim of Jatayuji is true. Okay, before I go there, see these, what I have pulled here, none of them from the Uttarakhand, by the way, but there are 6 references out of 600 plus from the Valmiki Ramayana. And just these 6 references, beautifully take you to 13 millennium BCE. And then the remaining 600 minus 6, you can call it for simplicity. When done, they again take you to 13 millennium BC, but also take you to the specific events of Ramayana, right from Rama's birth to Kusha and Lava being born, but also Kusha and Lava singing in the court of Bhagwan Rama. Okay, now quickly to the summary slide. Now I want to talk about the insights. So Uttarakanda, as the name suggests, is indeed a later addition to Valmiki Ramayana. Jatayuji and myself can totally agree on that. Uttarakanda provides, now this is my assertion. Jatayuji, I don't know if you'll agree with it or not, but that's irrespective of it. He thinks it doesn't add to the glory of Rama. I disagree on that. I say actually he does. Uttarakanda adds tremendous insights for understanding the events of Ramayana, Bhagwan Ram himself, and many more. Uttarakanda provides enormous useful and relevant information to understand Ramayana narration and the context. Acceptance of, this summary is mine, acceptance of Uttarakanda as part of Valmiki Ramayana is not limited to rigid Sanskrit Pandits or strictly go by the book crowd, okay? I have not seen any evidence other than the claim that Uttarakanda was added during the last recension of Mahabharata. This is not a position against that claim. Actually, I found that claim very interesting, very intriguing, okay? And I would like to see what it is. But somebody just saying it and giving some peripheral comments, like what Jatayuji has given few comments there, they can act as a corroborative evidence, but that is in no way evidence or no way decisive evidence, no way logical evidence in support of, it can be logical evidence in support of, it is not a decisive evidence to what we call nigraha, like a clinching. It's not a clinching evidence to assert that Uttarakanda was added during the last recension of Mahabharata. That is my point. We must be on guard against such claims posed without any empirical evidence, okay, without any logical evidence also. The next one, the reference to Yadu Vasudeva. Now, Jatayuji did not mention that, but I'm mentioning it, by the way. There is in a Uttarakanda a reference to, like, when there is a discussion of a yuga, and I may do another episode on this. Jivan Rao has published his Yuganta, a fascinating book, guys. I assure you, if you decide to read it, again, it's your choice. You may choose to read, you may choose not to read. It's a fascinating book. Once you start it, and if you are into this yuga, if you are into Mahabharata, if you are into Ramayana, the Treta Yuga, and then astronomy, or not astronomy, it's not a complicated book. You're going to be fascinated. So in that context also, I will discuss this. In Uttarakanda, there is a discussion of yugas, like Kruta Yuga and Kruta Yuga, Satya Yuga is the same, then Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and so on. In that context, there is a reference which says, hey, you know what? And then in Dwapar Yuga, the Yadu dynasty, Vasudeva will be born, and so on and so forth. Now, hey, if that was written, that particular reference cannot be written by Valmiki. Of course, in the Pujya Buddhi, some people will say, oh, yeah, he could do the prediction. Guys, if you believe this in the Pujya Buddhi, I have nothing to say. I'm not going to look at you and saying, guys, how crazy you are. But I do not subscribe to that particular thing. That is in no way a suspicion about the futuristic abilities of Valmiki ji. No, Valmiki ji was a Kavi, a Maharshi, Brahmarshi, whatever you want to call him, okay, astronomer par excellence, okay, that, I mean, just amazing, how amazing he is. You have to read Valmiki Ramayana. But I do not subscribe to that thing when somebody is given as a future list. And again, guys, this is a tangent, but that future is to be understood, whether it comes in a Purana, future list of kings, is to be totally different way than very naively thinking, oh, the person is predicting. In that context, I'm saying, so definitely this Yadu Vasudeva is definitely a interpolation, either a interpolation, or now this can be explained by the thesis of Jatayuji, that Uttarakanda was added during the last recension of Mahabharata. So this evidence can be taken as a corroborative evidence, okay, not the decisive evidence, a corroborative evidence that Uttarakanda was added during the last recension of Mahabharata. Why? Why only corroborative? Why not decisive? Because interpolation can also achieve this. Okay, anyways. And other such references can be easily explained, that's what I'm saying, via interpolations. So it will be interesting to check factual details mentioned in Uttarakanda. Remember that I gave you a thought experiment for somebody to work on. This is my early initial rudimentary thoughts on this. So it will be interesting to check factual details mentioned in Uttarakanda versus Ramupakhyan, and to see if Uttarakanda details match more with Ramupakhyan than the first 6 kind of Valmiki Ramayana. If true, again, this doesn't make it a decisive evidence, and I will explain some other time if it's not clear to you why that is not a decisive evidence, but it will definitely become a strong corroborative as opposed to weak corroborative evidence in support of the claim made by Jatayuji, okay, that Uttarakanda was added during the last recension of Mahabharata. So somebody needs to take this bullet number 5 as a research project. Fascinating research project of a great importance. And now what is going to happen? Hundreds of people ask me, give me some project. Now nobody's going to take it. And if somebody takes it, the person is going to start asking me, Nilesh, what do I read? No, guys, if that's the next thing comes to your mind, you are not qualified to do this project, okay? If you can do this project without having to bother anyone else, bother some of the few intellectual kshatriyas that we have, then please, I mean, if you can do it without bothering them, then you are a right candidate. If you have to ask me or somebody else, then you are not qualified to do this, okay? All right, let's go next. On the other hand, notwithstanding the dating of Uttarakanda, the chronology, as I showed you in one slide there, and astronomy references of Uttarakanda, they fit and corroborate elegantly and beautifully 13 millennium BC as the timing of Ramayana. Of course, I keep on doing episodes in the Shraddha and Pradnya series. I have done a good number of them with Adit Satsangiji, and I'll continue to do these there. But a fast way to get to this last bullet is to read the historic Ram, or 12,209 BC. Let me see if there is one more. Yeah. And thus, if Uttarakanda indeed belongs to the time of Sauti recension of Mahabharata, as Jatayuji is claiming, then there are many insights, by the way. If they come to me right now, I'll mention it. But the one simple insight then is, assuming this is true, I'm not saying it is true. I don't know that. I have not seen the evidence. I look forward to seeing the evidence. Then this means that in about 5480 BCE, the time of the last recension of Mahabharata, ancient records existed, which now we have lost, other than, say, Uttarakanda, which clearly referred to Ramayana happening in 13 millennium BC. Now, granted, they wouldn't have said 13 millennium BC. The BC is this whole thing because of the entire story of Jesus, and so history and prehistory. I mean, what nonsense, right? So history is anything after Jesus. Prehistory is anything before Jesus. Come on. Okay, but that's a different subject again. My point is, the records must have existed, assuming this claim is correct, I mean, claim is true and can be proved, that at the time of the last recension of Mahabharata, 5480 BCE, or about around that time, the ancient record existed, which now we have lost, other than, say, Uttarakanda, which clearly refer to Ramayana happening, say, about whatever that time, 7,000 years before their time. Okay. And that's how, and only that way, the astronomy season relevant references in Uttara would match with the 600 plus references of the other 6 kanda. So that is one insight. Now, what are the additional insights? Now, additional insights are, of course, I mean, that's true for Rigveda and that's true for Ramayana, how Ramayana survived and so on, those many thousand years, and Rigveda for thousands and thousands of years. Or Surya Siddhanta, okay? But what is interesting is, what was the mechanism? Again, we don't know, but what was the mechanism to preserve that kind of information, which was not necessarily in the form of a composed writing? Assuming that's how it was, and Uttarakhand was composed at the first time at the time of the last recension of Mahabharata. So we get many insights, but we also, it leads to many additional questions of higher importance, higher complexity. And usually if that happens, that's a good thing, guys. You know, the fact additional complex questions arise of higher complexity, of higher importance, okay? And to solve them, you need to put a lot more effort. It's just the nature of the scientific method. It's just the nature of an Darshana method. It's just the nature of Adhyatma. Once you get the basic yama niyama, then you get into the more stuff and more and more and more refined thinking and so on. This never ends. This is a very fascinating journey and also the destination. All right, so that's all I have. These are the books again, if you want to know the titles, on Amazon. And if you are in India, through Subbu Publications, as I said, the historic Ram becomes 12,209 BC. The Marathi translation of the historic Ram, almost ready, guys, actually, almost ready, going through final things, but it's going to take a long time because, again, it's a translation, but many other related issues. Is right now scheduled for its publication on the Ram Navami, 30th of March, 2023. And the Kannada translation of When Did the Mahabharata War Happen is ready, going through final touches, and will be coming out very soon too. Thank you very much. I don't know how long was that, possibly an hour long. It's never my intention to just stretch it or anything, but if I do not cover the relevant points related to a specific point I am making, I think just like, you know, a lot of information that is lost forever, it is like this. I will also mention, and some of you who know me closely know that once I start, I may have a certain subject in my mind and a certain response, but once I start talking, actually things just happen. If you ask me after I just stop this and somebody, you know, my family member asked me, what did you say in your recording? I will not able to say what I said. Okay. So usually that's why I try to capture it. This one this has been a challenge for me, like over the years, when I'm traveling on a plane, I'll get very interesting ideas, and then I don't have a pen and a paper. So I started carrying always a notebook with me, and I always keep it, but you know, still things will happen. I get some interesting thoughts and the notebook is not there, and those thoughts are gone forever again. You know, I can't even recall them. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, or you enjoy this. I will look forward to seeing you in another session episode of Shraddha and Pradnya very soon. Namaskar.